doing? I am so excited about today's episode because I have a wonderful guest. But before we get into that, let me start by saying thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in and watching and listening wherever you're listening. Let me know how you found the podcast, because following our relaunch, I find that we have new people from all over the world, and I'm excited to know how you got to hear about Living Inside Out, especially if you're a new listener. But I also want to thank you. And if you have been listening right in for more than 100 episodes, thank you. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and share. It's a small thing for you to do, but honestly, it makes a massive difference on the podcast. What's been on my mind for the last couple of weeks has been the evil twins of cynicism and imposter syndrome. I'll tell you why I call them twins. Imposter syndrome is that belief that any success that you're enjoying or you have enjoyed, it came about by happenstance. It's not due to your own efforts. And so you cannot take glory or take recognition for what you've done well. Cynicism looks at other people and other opportunities. It's an externally directed mindset or inspired by the external. So you might look at someone else and say, oh, they didn't really do that well, or you basically minimize other people's successes, or you minimize opportunities that you have because you don't trust that it's going to materialize into anything. Both of them are damaging, but at the same time, they seem to be one of those traits that we don't recognize how insidious they are, and we sort of let it pass. We may not actively engage in it or recognize that we're doing it, but we just kind of put it to the side thinking it's not a big deal, but it is a very big deal. And so when my conversation with Elizabeth, we don't talk about cynicism and imposter syndrome, but we do talk about authenticity and how speaking your truth and being yourself and showing up as yourself with your weirdness, with your strange gifts and personalities is the best thing you can do for yourself. And that really is the cure for cynicism. Being authentic, trying to live an authentic life or aiming for an authentic lifestyle is one of the best things you can do. If you've not listened to my TEDx talk, it's titled The Superpower of Authentic Storytelling, because authenticity really is a superpower. Well, I want to encourage you that if you are looking at an idea, or if you've come up with a business idea or an idea for a project to move you from A to B or T to Z, wherever, and you're doubting its power and doubting its relevance and doubting that it would even materialize into something, I want to assure you that your uniqueness is what birthed that idea in you, and you've got to run with it, because your path is unique for you, and on that path is absolutely everything that you need to excel and to manifest the ideas that you have in your head. If you stick to your path and you trust and pick up the ideas and suggestions that your spirit is throwing out there, I guarantee you that you will produce results. The issue we tend to have is that we look at other people on their path and think what they're doing is more attractive, or we compare our ideas with the status quo, with societal expectations, and we think, it's not really kosher, it's not going to work, or it's odd. I'm so guilty of that. The number of times I have ignored a yearning in my spirit to do the weirdest thing, and then I find that actually, if I had done it, I would have been the first person doing this, or even if I'm not the first, it's something doing something so rare. I'm going to stop rambling, and I want you to meet Elizabeth. I am so excited to introduce my dear friend, Elizabeth Solaru. Elizabeth Solaru is a multi-award winning luxury business consultant, author, and world-renowned cake artist. As the CEO and founder of the Diversity in Luxury Awards, she is a pioneering voice advocating for inclusivity and representation in the luxury sector. Her clients include UHMWIS and Royalty. Her creative talent and business acumen led to a successful transition into luxury consulting, where she now advises brands on how to navigate the complexities in the luxury market. Elizabeth, welcome to the Living Inside Out podcast. I am so thrilled to have you.
I am absolutely excited to be on this podcast, and I cannot wait for us to share. I'm so excited. Thank you so much for having me.
You are welcome. Elizabeth is my dear friend, and I remember how we met. We met through a mutual friend, Joke, who got me to pick up her daughter's first birthday cake from you. And I remember thinking it was quite a distance from where I lived, and I was double thinking, how can I avoid this journey? But eventually met you, and I don't think I had a wall up because I didn't know what to expect. I just went there like, okay, I'm just going to pick up a cake. First of all, you showed me the cake. It was absolutely beautiful. I remember it. It had pink and it had aqua. And I want to say it was either unicorn or mermaid. I can't remember. And then we just started talking, and we just, hit it off really well. But the first thing that stuck out with you was that you didn't just talk, you just started advising me. Once you found out what I was doing, as the baby caught you up, you started saying, you should do this, you should do that. And then Elizabeth has stayed in touch, and we've just both stayed in touch and built a friendship since then. And she's not wavered from that person who wants to see other women excel. So our conversations are never about, the mundane. In every single conversation, I take away so much. And even with this, just before we started recording, a very brief interaction, already I was feeling inspired and taken. So you guys are in for such a treat today. Elizabeth, I can't wait to dive in. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. I mean, it's really weird. You remember all the details of how you met me. I know you came to collect the cake, but that's all I remember. And I'm really, I'm sorry if I was coaching you without your permission.
No.
Oh my God. But like you said, I really do want to see everybody win, especially women, especially women in business. And I love that the kind of interactions I have is not the usual sitting down and talking about people. We're sitting down and we're talking about ideas and possibilities and what we're going to be doing in the future. And those are the things that excite me.
Absolutely. No, I'm really thrilled, and I'm so glad that you're here today, because the last time we met, which we had lunch together, I remember thinking I should have just had this whole thing on record, but I'm so glad that we're here. So first, I want to find out, you're such a dynamic woman. You are beautiful inside and out, and I'm not flattering you. I'm saying exactly what is true. And anyone who's met you can attest to that. And if you can see her on the screen, you can see that she's a beautiful woman. But you're also a go-getter. You've had a varied career over the years. You've recently launched the Luxpreneur, which is a brilliant book. So what I want to, before we go into all of that, I want to find out what you were like as a child. And I want to see if there are any pointers in your childhood that led you into this amazing person that you are today.
Gosh, let me go back. So childhood, born in the UK and then taken back to Nigeria when I was about 10. And that's the time I kind of remember most because it was such a culture shock. There was a shock to the senses, to the system. There was an overwhelming amount of people around. I remember that. And a lot of it was positive. I remember the food. I remember my tongue really burning. So that was a shock. And then shortly after, I was sent to boarding school. So that was also another shock. And I was very shy, very introverted, really self-conscious, and extremely fearful. That's how I would describe myself. However, I was very much an empath. I don't know how to describe it. I could sense and feel things really intently, to the point that even being able to almost, I would say, maybe even predict behavior and predict the future, kind of. And I remember my mom saying that if I was born a few centuries back or a few decades back, people would literally label me as a witch. But it wasn't, because I could literally sense things and predict things. But then looking back now, it was just, to me anyway, it was normal. It was just having a sense of empathy. And I probably was able to read body language, those little microseconds of whatever it is. So I was able to read that and sense that. So that was what I was like as a child, but I was also very, very curious. I was really curious as a child, but my curiosity was hidden behind, because I was very quiet, it was hidden behind a facade, and I had a very retentive memory. So that retentive memory saved me in school. Because people think that if you have a retentive memory, you're intelligent. No, I did not see myself as intelligent, to be honest with you. Although I did really well in school, my report cards were great. But I think what it was, I was able to read my teachers really well. I would sit in front in class, and if there was a certain word or language they loved using, I would write that in the exam, my exam paper. I'd repeat it, or I repeat that sentence or whatever. And so it was psychology. It wasn't anything to, I just thought, it's normal. They said that, I might as well give it back to them. So that was what I was like as a child. But as I grew older, I found Nigeria to be like, I started enjoying Nigeria. It was fun. There was a sense of freedom, and there was a sense of identity because everybody looked like me. And also those, I believe, were some of the golden years of Nigeria. I remember the currency being changed, and there was a song about it. I remember the early adverts from the first TV station in Nigeria, which was WNTV. There were so many things. I had access to comics. My brother and sister and I, every Wednesday we were at all our pocket money was at the comic shop. So it was things like that that made my childhood incredible. And then also teenage years, etc. I remember all these big Black American soul bands coming to Nigeria to play at the National Theatre. So I watched Shalama, I watched Sky, Kool and the Gang, who are the others? So many others. So it was just so, Nigeria then was nice. Nigeria was nice, and it felt safe as well. And then as I got to, because I went to university in Nigeria, so as I got to university days, just going out at night randomly, you're chipping for petrol money, 5 naira will take you to Ikoyi and back to the campus in Akoka. So yeah, so I had really, really great memories. Yeah.
Wow, oh my goodness, you took me back as well and made me feel so nostalgic for that Nigeria. It's funny because many people's opinions today about our country is what they see today, and much of it is negative, and the mindset has changed, the attitudes have changed, the currency is another whole podcast by itself. But it's necessary to really emphasize that for those of us who had the privilege of living in Nigeria, of growing up in Nigeria, because I was also born here in the UK and grew up in Nigeria, I think that it really did set us up for life. You mentioned seeing people who look like you. One doesn't realize the value of that until you're placed in that environment where everyone looks like you. And in my case, I didn't have anything to compare it with because I had no memory of living here. I was a baby when I went back to Nigeria, but it was coming to England, and I was okay with England, but going back to Nigeria 5 years after my UK relocation, for the first time, I was in my late teens and I went back to Nigeria, and that was the first time I realized that everyone looked like me. And oh my goodness, I did not grow up as a Black girl. I grew up as a girl,
Yeah.
And so all of those are such privileges that we enjoy, which I'm so thankful for. Even though we don't live there now, the fact that we had that as our foundation was a true, true blessing. So your business journey, you started off, so might as well continue. So university, and then at some point you came to England, and what were the first few years like career-wise?
Yeah, so university, did my degree in microbiology, my master's in medical microbiology and parasitology, then came back to the UK, trained as a biomedical scientist at St. Mary's Hospital, ended up working at Great Ormond Street Hospital. And then I remember one day sitting in the lab thinking, there's got to be more to my life than being a lab rat. And I decided to go into the world of business without knowing anything. And typical Nigerian, what do? We go and do another degree. So I went off to do an MBA. And it was while I was doing my MBA that I had a realization that there wasn't anything really out there on how to transition careers. So I'd been a scientist all my life. So what do I do? So I kind of badgered my business school. The timing, again, very fortuitous, badgered my business school. So they gave me a role, which was head of MBA careers. I love that title, although there wasn't any money in it. And they gave me half an office and an email. So with those tools, I reached out to headhunters and companies. I reached out to all the alumni of the business school and got them to come back to talk to the current MBA students that I was looking after. So while I was doing all that networking was when I met someone who said to me, would you like to work for my headhunting firm? I'm starting a new firm. Would you like to work for me? And of course I said yes, because the funny thing was I had actually lost the week I had the meeting with his company. I'd lost my job as an MBA, head of MBAs, blah, 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 on the Monday. And I met with them, I think, on a Wednesday, and I got a job offer on the Friday. So within the course of a week, I went from, oh my God, I don't have a job, to having a proper job in the city. And working for that firm, I realized that you don't have to be a big firm or a big company to win big. You don't have to be big to win big, because just prior to me joining, they won the bid to do all the recruitment for the board, from chair to whatever, to the board of the Olympic Delivery Authority. This was this was about 8 years before the Olympics, 2012. It was about 8 years before. So they had won that bid, had done really, really well by putting together an incredible team and by pitching differently. So I was responsible for delivering what we call the interims. So the interim chief executive, interim finance director, because you need temporary people and then you hire permanent people. So I was in charge of all that. My first ever headhunting role was a finance director. And I remember sitting there thinking, I've never even run a lemonade stand, and here I am interviewing all these finance directors. So I learned a lot. So I learned, again, I was able to read body language. And then I thought to myself, okay, how do I set myself apart from my colleagues? I'd always written, because I could write, again, scientific background, you write papers and stuff like that. So I wrote articles which were put on the front page of the company website. I then used the internet as well. In those days, blogging was at the infancy. So I remember, I don't know why I did it. I Googled CEOs with blogs, because I read a Forbes article that talked about, CEOs who blogged, because blogging was new. So I tracked down as many as possible. I would always know when they posted a new blog. One in particular would post at 12 o'clock on a Sunday. I'll be the first to leave a comment. And I did that for several months. And eventually that led to a proper meeting that I had to take my bosses to, because it was such a big whale in the accounting world, like top 4 accounting firm. So I was able to do unusual things like that. And then I ended up working for a couple more headhunting firms. And then 2008, the market hit. Obviously, everybody was laid off in the city. And then I thought to myself, okay, milestone birthday. If I don't do it now, I'll never do it. So I set up my cake company. And then I quickly realized that, oh my God, I don't have any clients. How do I get clients? And from my headhunting days, we were trained to make 100 cold calls every week. Rain or shine, you had to make those calls. So I took the yellow pages and I started calling all the event planners or event companies or related companies in the yellow pages. And I made about 100 and something calls. And then one afternoon, I think it was a Wednesday afternoon, I called this particular number, and at the other end was a very young girl. And she said, do you make cupcakes? I said, of course we make cupcakes. And she said, bring some, can you? And I said, oh, by the way, I'm going to be in your area in the next 3 days. Of course I wasn't, but I'm going to be in your area in the next 3 days. Can I bring some samples? And she said, fine. I dropped the samples. I was on the bus on the way back home, and I got a call saying, can you please come back? Lady Elizabeth wants to see you. And in my head, I was like, who is Lady Elizabeth? But I went back to see Lady Elizabeth, and she happened to be Lady Elizabeth Anson, the late Queen's cousin. She was the first proper party planner in the UK. It happened to be her. And she said, yep, gave me the order for 250 cupcakes on the spot, wrote me a check from a private bank, Coots. And that was how I got started really in the luxury world. And that's how I started my business properly.
This is a masterclass. Oh my goodness, this is a masterclass, because I think a lot about how we are made uniquely. And when you were talking about your childhood earlier and your ability to just feel and read body language, that all I could think of was that was a gift that God gave you on purpose. Like he wired that ability into you, and you are supposed to be like that. And then I thought then about how everyone's incredibly unique and everyone's got their own natural gifts. But sometimes when we see an unusual gift in a person, we shy away from them because we're uncomfortable with its unusualness. We don't celebrate it. And sometimes it's even within us. We see our own abilities and we get scared of it because it's not common. And we're like, what, let me just put that aside and let me go chisel out those weird edges and try and fit in with everyone else. But just hearing how you were able to use your gifts, because the ability to think differently, to be strategic is one thing. But then when you follow through on these very individual and different ideas, it's a whole nother thing. So how can what words of advice will you have for somebody who recognizes their uniqueness, but maybe they don't even know that that's what it is. They just think it's a strange or a weird thing. What advice can you give to them on developing the confidence and the courage to actually go along with it?
That's a really, really great question, because that question is, in my mind, almost the secret of success. Courage and confidence, because those were two things that I absolutely lacked, or rather I thought I lacked it. But thinking back to some of the things I've done, I didn't really lack it. What happened was I didn't feel comfortable being confident and being courageous. So for example, I talk about my first job as a trainee biomedical scientist, and how I got that job was that I literally walked into, I used to live on Old Street, and behind where I lived was a Moorfields Eye Hospital. And I literally, when I walked in to the hospital and I said, send me to the microbiology department, please. They did. Nobody challenged me, which was really strange. I got to the microbiology department and I said, may I speak with the head of department, please? Again, nobody asked. So he came out and I said, these are my qualifications. I'm looking for a job. I don't care what it is. I'll make tea, I'll clean. I just want to work in a lab. It's my dream. Do you have any vacancies? And he looked at me and he said, wait there. And he went in and he photocopied all the jobs in a particular, what's it called? In a particular publication. That publication I would not have had access to, because it's only received and got by biomedical scientists. You wouldn't have an access to it from the outside. So he photocopied all the trainee jobs, which are 10. I remember distinctly 10, and he gave them to me. And he said, I don't have a job, but please, I wish I'd gotten his name. I wish I'd gotten his number just to say thank you. I didn't think to do so, but wherever he is, I always send out a prayer. And why do I use that example? This was me, painfully shy, not thinking, oh my God, but there was just something that compelled me to do it. So I want to tell people, do it afraid, do it fearful, do it even if you're subject to ridicule. Funnily enough, I posted on TikTok today about ridicule is the currency of greatness. It's one of the currencies of greatness. If you're not ridiculed or rejected, you're not on your path to greatness. If all you're getting is, oh my God, that's amazing, nah, trust me, it's gonna, because everyone's gonna hail you if something is halfway good. But for real greatness, you need to be ridiculed, you need to be rejected. In fact, some people would even say despised. And sometimes that, it does, not all the time, but sometimes that's the truth of the matter. So do it afraid, do it fearful, do it ridiculed, do it rejected, just do it. To borrow from Nike, you just have to go out there and put yourself out there. One of my regrets is when I was building my business or when I was building my career, I wish I had put myself out there a lot more. I wish I'd paid it because I hated being in front of a camera. I can be in front of 10,000 people, it doesn't bother me. But put a camera in front of my face and I'll be like, I don't want my image captured, I'll be hiding. So I would have done that a lot sooner. So anybody out there still thinking about it, still wondering about it, if you're thinking about it at all, just go out there and do it and keep doing it until you get so good at it. Because trust me, people will move on to talk about somebody else tomorrow. We're not that important to them. Right now, you might be a topic of gossip, but so what? There are people that were gossiped about 10 years ago. Who remembers them?
Absolutely.
So that would be my advice.
That's a really good advice. That's excellent advice. Embrace your authenticity and then head forward with it, and don't be shy. Don't be shy of the camera, don't be shy of people. Just get yourself forward out there and do it afraid. Really love that. So let's go into the Luxpreneur. So I love what you shared about your father buying from Harrods and buying in the sale and so on. When it comes to luxury, a lot of people have a misconception that luxury is anything that's expensive, which is not necessarily true because, your father wasn't I mean, they were high quality and expensive items, what he was buying them in the sale. But people have this misconception, and the first thing they think of is it's expensive. They don't think about craftsmanship or delivery or materials used and so on. So when it comes to what is your first, what would you say? I don't want to ask you what the definition of, I guess, what would your definition of luxury be is probably the best question I can ask.
Gosh, that's a really huge question because luxury means different things to different people. To some people, it's all about branded goods. To some people, it's completely different. To me, right now, at this stage of my life, luxury to me would be number one, great health. Perfect health. Because I always say if you get to a certain age and you're not taking any tablets and you're not on any medication and you have peace of mind, that is a luxury in itself. So to me, right now, at this stage of my life, luxury is great health. That's number one. But in terms of whether something expensive is luxury, etc., I always say expensive, just because it's expensive doesn't mean it's luxury.
Absolutely.
But luxury by its very nature tends to be expensive. And for the things you've said, craftsmanship, rarity, quality, exclusivity, etc. But those are big words. And in some ways are very for a lot of us, our definition of luxury has been shaped and founded by luxury experts or professors of luxury who have written amazing books on luxury. They've written books on luxury business. But these books, as amazing as they are, as well-researched and well-referenced as they are not of real practical use when it comes to a luxury business founder. And that was why I wrote the Luxpreneur. I simply wrote a book that I wish I could have read 20 years ago when I founded my business. So for me, I always believe that luxury starts with you. It starts with a luxury mindset. Because yes, you may not have money, and there's a massive difference. People think, oh, to live a luxury life, you've got to have money and blah, 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 blah. Yes, in some ways, maybe. However, if you have a luxury mindset where you place quality, good living, looking after your health, looking after your financial, your spiritual, emotional, mental well-being, if you place that as priority, then you are living a luxurious life. Because look, think about it, there are very many high net worth individuals that are filled with depression, they kill themselves, they blah, blah, blah. So luxury is very personal.
Yeah.
And one of the things I also wanted to kind of look at was the old money, new money kind of reductive mindset, which to me is very binary. As a business, money is money.
Right.
Whether old money, whether new money, whether your luxury is loud and vulgar, or whether it's quiet and coded and stealthy, it's your luxury, your way. And as a business person, we need to say, okay, in terms of the kind of clients that we want or the kind of luxury business that we want to be, what is it? So when I wrote the book, I had, okay, three things, so the three key themes. So the first one was you as an entrepreneur. What kind of entrepreneur are you? So I actually I typed to myself because I created these archetypes. So I typed to myself because I always like putting myself, you know, if I'm going to ask you to do something, I need to be able to do it myself. So I typed to myself and I came out as an artisan visionary, which is good and bad. The good side is obviously I love creating, and it doesn't matter what I'm creating, I just love creating. And being a visionary as well means I can see into the future, I can future cast, and that's great. But here's a problem. If I set up a business, it will not be a business, it will be a hobby, because I need someone to market whatever I create. I need someone, a business strategist. I need a financial guru to tell me, Elizabeth, stop spending so much on materials, because left to me, I will use the best materials for my cakes. I'll use the best chocolate, the best thing. And I did for a lot. I still do, but all the costing was irrelevant to me because I just wanted to create. And then the man hours I was putting into my creations as well. So that is where so I then realized, oh my God, this is why I needed this team around me. So the first part of the book tells you about yourself, your luxury mindset. Then the second part of the book, I dive into the 5 key pillars of a luxury business. So imagine a table with 4 legs, and running in the center of the table is a particular pole, and that pole is storytelling. Yes. So the way you speak about your business, the way, for example, and I use examples of Gucci, who created Gucci. He came from a family of leather craftsmen, but not high-end. They just did leather products. And it was until he left home as a teenager and he went all the way from Italy to London. And he worked at the Savoy Hotel as a bellboy, as a lift operator. And then he noticed one thing. The luggage of guests were beautifully crafted. And that was when he thought, oh my God, maybe I can go back home and we can start creating leather goods that look like that. So but think about, you know, the story I've just told you now. Right. Isn't that more now Gucci suddenly became more interesting to you, and Gucci suddenly resonated more with you. So the storytelling is about emotional resonance. How do we tell our story that it resonates emotionally? And I break everything down in the book. I give you the plot, the characters. I tell you how a story is built, and I give you the example so you can go ahead and build your own story. And I do the same with the other pillars as well. Break it down so people are able to do that. And then the third part, the last part of my book, is on luxury clients. So, and I spoke earlier, old money, new money. I talk about the 8 different archetypes, what makes them tick, where you can find them, how you can connect with them, etc., etc. And then after I speak about that, I also talk about the different cultures, and, you know, if you're from, if your client's from this place or that place or that place. And I try to differentiate between archetypes and stereotypes, because that's very, very important. And again, looking at the archetypes that I created, they transcend culture and they transcend race, and they transcend, you know, boy, girl, etc., etc. So that for me was how I envisioned the book. And that's what I tried to deliver, because I needed to deliver the book from the perspective of the reader, because whoever reads the book is the one, you're going to be the one taking some of the learnings from the book and applying them. So I needed to write from that perspective. So yeah, that was how the book came about.
Yeah, it's such a brilliant read. I haven't finished it yet. I've started, and I did, and some of what you talked about with some of the questions that I was going to ask actually. The first one, when it comes to the story, I didn't know that about Gucci, so I haven't reached that part of the book yet. But many of the other luxury brands besides them have stories that are steeped in wealth and heritage, or at least that's the perception that we have, you know, that it all started there. But how can a brand with a story that's not rooted in wealth? I know that Gucci was a great example, but how about modern day brands, the average person? Because that was another thing as well, is that you wrote this book for the ordinary person, and you've managed to erase the divide between you know, perceptions of what a luxury entrepreneur should be. So how can an average or a normal person, not steeped in wealth, with no old money or even new money, tell their brand story so that it resonates and it does not water down the perception of their brand?
That's a fantastic question, and it's one of the central themes and central reasons behind the book. Now, we need to realize that all these heritage brands or whatever, they all started from somewhere. So if you only started yesterday, you can't claim you're 100 years old. And also, being 100 years old is no guarantee that your brand is relevant today. So for me, it's about being, so there are a couple of things. Number one, being relevant. So are you starting something that is relevant for these times? Number one. And then you need to do something, you know, that future casting. In 100 years' time, what do you want your brand to be known for? And you start from that premise. I want my brand to be known for creating the most exquisite XYZ.
Right.
Then you start talking about your brand, about creating the most exquisite XYZ. You also bring in personal examples from your own story of how you've managed that journey into creating XYZ. You can even add, because I always say our stories are good, bad, and ugly. And a lot of us, what we do is that we hide the ugly parts. But the ugly parts are actually the parts that might resonate the most with your audience, to say, I mean, and I said, you know, I started with 40 pounds in the bank and a secondhand mixer. That's how I started. And I say it everywhere. Does that take away from the beauty of my cakes? No. Does that take away from the beauty of my speech as a speaker? Absolutely not. It makes people think, if she can do it, I can do it.
Yeah.
However, it's about knowing where to use your story as well. You can't just be referring, or if you've had failures, you can't just be referring to failure, failure, failure. You need to, people love the overcoming of the failure. So you failed at maths. What did you do to overcome? Or I failed at maths, but despite that, I managed to do X, Y, Z. So it's the way you tell the story as well. So it's not just about, oh, I'm not a heritage brand. It's, yes, I started yesterday. However, this has been my growth. This is where I want to get to. And by the way, this is the progress that I've made so far. And people believe that, oh, if I tell X, Y, Z, it's watering down my brand. It may water it down. And again, this is why it's good to know the different archetypes and the different types of luxury clients. There are some luxury clients, they'll buy from you because they like you and you are a high trustworthy individual. That's very important because they trust you. And I often say your product doesn't have to be the best, but it's going to be good. Because unfortunately, many products out there are very mediocre, very average, extremely average, actually. And yet they manage to be luxury. So it's not about whether your product is perfection, because for people like me that have perfectionist tendencies, I've come to realize that perfection can never be attained in my eyes, because I'll always see an area of improvement. So for me, perfection is an ongoing process. It's not a destination I arrive at. I've never looked at a cake of mine and gone, oh my God, that's amazing. Yes, it's good, it's beautiful, but I can,
We've done something different.
we can do something different, or these are, if I had to do it tomorrow, I'd have done X, Y, Z. So my point here is that people should stop beating themselves up about not having as much maybe history as a heritage brand, but where you are right now is a pretty good place to start. Because at the end of the day, the one thing that you have over a heritage brand is that you have all the benefit of knowing what their history is. They don't know what your history is. Another benefit you have is that you're a lot more agile. So you can change, you can change course, you can move. I had an advantage over some of my competitors who was outspending me 3,000 to 1 or 10,000 to 1 on PR, because I had no money for PR. And I'm like, okay, since I don't have any money for PR, Elizabeth, you got to get creative here. And I got creative, and I was getting the same press and even better press than some of them were getting. Again, I had the ability to be agile. Okay, so they may know the editor or whatever editor, but guess what? They may know the editor-in-chief, but I may know the features editor, right? They may know that person, the publisher, but I may know the proofreader, right? Think about the power dynamics.
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah. So the proofread, so it's amazing how you can navigate these things, and don't forget the power of gatekeepers. Your heritage brand, they come with, I'm a heritage brand, right? That is what they lead with. But you were leading with, well, just getting started. I need all the help I can get. Can you help me, please? That can you help me, please, is appealing to some people. And it will not be appealing to some people. So when you read the book and you look at the different types of luxury brands and you look at the different types of luxury clients, you're able to say, aha, so this is why I get on with this particular client than that particular client. And that was why somebody like Lady Elizabeth, just by me not being a heritage brand, right? She didn't even say, I don't care. She didn't even say, oh, have you been in business for like 10 years or whatever? She didn't care. Because people, there are certain people that spot something in you. Right. So I suppose a very short answer to your question is be yourself and start from where you are.
Love it. Resonates so well with me. My TED Talk is titled The Superpower of Authentic Storytelling, because I believe that the only way that you can outsell and outcompete anyone is by being yourself, because there are no two versions of you. So you're a rarity, and that makes you precious, and that makes you attractive to people who are looking for something that's exclusive. So when we take that part of ourselves and we put it into how we're running our businesses, and especially with such a great book like this, using some of the principles, the pillars you mentioned, the buyer archetypes and the founder archetypes as well, I think we're in for an amazing experience as business owners, and also, progress and moving forward. So it's funny because I think it was earlier this year, I finally faced up to the fact that I had avoided being the face of the baby cut shop, because my story of losing everything, which I am so proud to talk about. And like you start saying you started with 40 pounds, I'm always like, yeah, I launched my business with $75 and I built my website myself. I enjoy telling my story because people find it inspiring enough for them to take action on theirs. And I also love telling it because when I started out, like you, there was really no true business story of success from, people starting from the ground up, except Sarah Blakely. She was the one person, the founder of Spanx, who I would listen. I used to watch this one interview or one talk she did for Inc.com. And I'd watch it almost every evening to the point where my children know her story inside out, because she told the truth. She was an ordinary girl, became a female billionaire, the youngest female billionaire in her time, and built an amazing brand. And she's now gone on to launch Snicks, her second brand. So I'm watching that and thinking, one day I'm also going to tell my story, because I don't want people to think that success is flash cars and mansions, and then they feel demeaned because they haven't reached that level, and they feel exhausted because that's what they're aiming for and what they're trying to. So I agree with you, the power of storytelling, but also the power of being authentic when you tell your stories, because people can relate to it. So you mentioned the perfectionist archetype. Can you share how you mentioned, you talked about some of, I guess maybe you have partly answered the question, but how can some of the weaknesses of a perfectionist archetype be negated so that it doesn't topple the business?
Yeah, I mean, if number one, the first thing you do is you need to choose an industry where perfectionism is tolerated, where perfectionism is even welcome. Because if you choose an industry, a fast-moving industry, for example, like technology or industries like I can only think of tech now. Yeah, so, or banking, for example, what would happen is you'll be frustrated, they will be frustrated, because things are fast-moving industries. You need to be constantly on the move, and not that you shouldn't make sure that everything's all okay and all right, but you don't have to be so much of a perfectionist. Having said that, the thing about perfectionists is that, yes, you want to get things right. You want to make sure the best possible product is going out, but you also need to think about the money, because time is money. So you need a really good operations person or a finance director, somebody around you to go, you only have a budget of X in terms of money and in terms of time, right? You only have this budget, this resources allocated, so you need to do your best within that. So somebody that will constrain you and somebody that will ground you to let you realize that you're not selling to angels, you're selling to mortals. And in fact, I know that in some luxury industries, those flaws in product is actually proof that it was made by human hands.
That's right, yeah.
Because in the old days, seamstresses, when they made dresses, on the hemline will be tiny, tiny, tiny droplets of blood. And yes, and
from the needles.
Yes, and from the needles, and the clients will be so proud to show that off, that it means my garment, my garment's made 1,000 man hours went into the embroidery or the whatever. So there are ways in which you can actually use a process. It's a Japanese process called kintsugi to highlight the flaw. So in their culture, when a plate breaks or a crockery breaks, they don't throw it away. It's repaired using 24 karat gold, and those fracture lines are actually highlighted with gold. So you can do that with your products as well in luxury. Because rather than say, okay, my cake covering is not flawless, it doesn't look like it was covered by a machine, that could be part of your process as well. But like I said, you need to create a great product in the first place. So my point is that whatever that perfectionist tendencies, it needs to be mitigated by people around you, the right team around you, to make sure that you're not spending and wasting endless hours and time on something. It's all about complementary skills. It's all about having the right people and the right team around you. And it's also about outsourcing. Because sometimes as solopreneurs, as one-man bands, we think, oh my God, I can't afford to outsource. Yes, you can. You can share a PA with another business, with another friend. You can do joint things with people in related industries. You can ask your supplier, who do you blah, 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 blah with? Can you recommend someone, or who do you work with? So there are ways in which you can outsource and share resources so that you're not the only person feeling, oh my God, I've got to do it myself, because if it's not done by me, it won't be done right.
Right. Right.
It'll be done differently. It doesn't mean it's not done right. It might be done in ways in which you could think, okay, I wouldn't do it that way. But as long as you get an amazing outcome, that is the most important thing to the client.
Yeah, I love that. And you're right, because even with us as well, because our furniture is individually made to order, we already have on our terms and conditions, and again, it's made from wood, which is a natural product, that there will be inconsistencies in design, but it's part of the beauty of it. And one of the benefits we have, one of our cots, the Tribeca, has a curve on the top. And I noticed that after a while, because of the nature of wood, the shrinking happens, and where there is a join, we started to notice the separation between the two, where we had made it to look seamless, like it was all one piece, and it's just not possible because of the nature of wood. So what I then ended up doing was redesigning it, making a change to the design, and I've told them to actually score the line. So make it an actual dent, like we desired, and that's one of yeah, exactly. And it's the benefit of being a small business, or if you're starting out from scratch, is like you said, you can be flexible, you can be agile, and you can change as you go along. Now, if we were a high street brand with mass-produced pieces where we have already got like 1,000 pieces on the shelf, there's nothing I'll be able to do about it. But the flexibility of being small is something that we should celebrate. There's a story I want to share about, which I remember, I want to say it was about 7, 8 years ago, maybe not so long ago, but it was the end of the year, and there's this article I was reading that shared the top 10 tweets of the year, whatever year that was. And it was all by major businesses. And I noticed there was a common thread running through all of these tweets. And these were Domino's Pizza, for example. Someone had tweeted saying, my pizza is late, but he tweeted in patois, where's my pizza? Where's my pizza? It's late. And Domino's replied in patois that it's coming and the rider's on his way, but they replied in patois. And of course, that got many retweets. There was Sainsbury's who said someone out said, I can't find the fish. It's in the wrong aisle, or where's the fish aisle? And they used all kinds of play on fish words, fish species to respond to him. It's in the place where it normally is, and and if you look in the aisle, and it was just it was fun. But what I realized was that these were all major brands coming out from behind the scenes, and coming forward, humanizing themselves. Trying to sound like humans and trying to be individual and trying to reach the human, because they've recognized that people do business with people. Whereas here we are, small brands, trying to sound big when we have the advantage of already being human. So there are so many benefits to being small and to having access to a book like this if you are going into the luxury industry, or even if I've been in this industry for close to 20 years, well, interiors generally, but it's a book that I need because and this leads to my next question, is as I was reading about the founder archetypes and the brand archetypes, I began thinking or realizing that I've tried to be multiple things, because I'm recognizing, yes, this makes sense, that makes sense, that makes sense. But rather than over the years recognize that there are different types of founders and I fall into one or maybe two of them, what I thought was, as a business owner, I've got to force myself to exhibit all of these traits, which can be very draining because no one can be all things. So that's what it has done for me. How can we imagine being let me pull out another archetype. 1 second. So these are the it's on this side. That's the buyer. So how can we, knowing what our own archetype is, manage to somehow reach different types of buyers who all have different archetypes without also watering down our individuality and also watering down the marketing message?
Okay, that's a brilliant question, and another reason why I wrote the book. So I'm going to take you through, let's take a typical luxury brand that we are all trying to be like. So let's, we started with Gucci, we might as well take Gucci. So Gucci does something brilliantly. Gucci, they appeal to the younger generation. They also appeal to the older generation. So they're multi-generational. Anybody can go in and buy something. But there's something about all of these brands that they do really, really well. So and this is a very rough guide. It's a lot more complex than this. So, but I've summarized it in a way that it's easily digestible. So look at the brand on 3 levels. So level 1, which is the basement, you have your perfumes, your lipsticks, your beauty products, etc., and maybe very tiny accessories. And if I save up for a month, I might be able to afford a Gucci perfume or something like that. And then you go to the next level. The next level is your handbags and shoes and off the peg and that sort of thing. If I save up for a year, I'll be able to afford a pair of shoes, etc., etc. And then the next level up is your couture. And the couture is at least 6 figures. And notice something about the marketing for all 3 levels. Number 1, is it the same? Number 2, even if it's not the same, they still have a thread running through, and the thread is Gucci, 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 Gucci. When you look at how couture is marketed, so let's take Paris Fashion Week or London Fashion Week, and they have a show. Even before the show, they have a pre-show. So the pre-show, there's maybe a dinner or a gathering of influencers and celebrities and the creative director and blah, 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 blah. You have that gathering. Then you have the actual show itself. Outside of the show, you've got the photographers, you've got the people posing, the invited guests in Gucci on the steps, blah, 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 content. Then you have the actual show itself, which doesn't last more than, it doesn't last that long, actually. Maybe half an hour tops or whatever. But remember, even in the preparation for the show takes months. The staging, the lighting, the models, the fitting, the creating of the clothes takes months and months and months, right? Only for it to be over in half an hour.
Right.
Now, how many people are actually going to buy couture? Not that many people. Some buyers, you'll have some buyers in the audience, and you might have, I don't know, 20, 30 real proper billionaire type women and wives and blah, 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 that would actually buy couture. However, this couture line that you're seeing, it relates back to the lipsticks, the perfumes, etc., that's funding that big show, drama, theater, spectacle. Because what they've done is they've made it a seamless cycle. But sometimes as a solopreneur, we want to start at the very top. We want to start at the couture. We want to be pretty, without realizing that the big brands, they've got this formula really, really down well, because they know it's like a pyramid. At the bottom, the basement is where you get your sales. You get a lot of sales. Then you've got the middle. Then you've got the very, very top. However, one drives the other. The fashion show, we have that image in our minds when we're getting that perfume, because I'm already seeing myself, on the catwalk or outside, admiring or whatever level we fit in. So that is how we need to think about how we market, how we brand, even as solopreneurs. I also want to point out that sometimes we need to, and we hate to do this naturally because we want to appeal to as many people as possible. We might need to niche within the niche. We might need to niche down even within luxury. You look at the buyer archetypes and you say, you know what, I'm only going to serve this particular archetype. And it might look crazy, it might look whatever, and you might think, oh my God, I'm leaving money on the table. But guess what? The more you niche down and specialize, the more clients of that type you will actually attract. because they can identify themselves
Yeah.
in whatever it is you're marketing, as opposed to if you're marketing to as wide as possible, they're like, not so sure, not so sure. Meanwhile, they'll go out and spend 3 times as much with somebody else, and you're wondering why. So it's about, as I said very, very early in the podcast, it's about creating that emotional connection and emotional resonance. Because when we buy from a particular brand, we are looking for that emotional resonance and that emotional connection, because that's the only reason why you will put your name down for a handbag that's costing 5-6 figures, only for you to get it 2 years later, only for you to get given whatever it is they're offering. You don't even have a say. You can't even say, okay, I want blah, 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 blah. Although some of their mega clients can choose their leathers and stuff like that. But a lot of the time, if you're offered a bag because it was offered, that's what you take. But why does that dynamic happen? It's because emotionally you are so invested. And that emotion makes you feel something. So we need to think more about how can we serve our clients on a deeper emotional level than what we currently are.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. It makes so much sense and very informative as well. I can't wait to really dig in and get the best I can out of this book. I know that it's going to change the way that I see myself and see the business and even how we run things here at the Baby Cut Shop. I have so many more questions, Elizabeth, so you're going to have to come back. I wanted to ask about trends, because you talked about trends not being one of the markers for mass market or high street brands, and it's not something luxury businesses do. But we've got to run because we've run out of time. So you're going to have to come back. But I want to say that what this book has done for me, as soon as I started reading it, literally within minutes, was reignite a fire in me for my business that I thought had sort of not so much died out, but was burning at a very, very low flame, and I started reading this and I got so excited because it's peeled back layers in my in the business itself that had opened up a pathway to, or opened up possibilities to get me on a path that I didn't even know existed in some ways. I don't know if that's making any sense, but let's just say that it's doing something to me, and I know that it's going to have the same effect on people who read it. So where can the Luxpreneur be found? Where can people buy it?
On Amazon, that is where it is. Although you can get it if you order it on from Waterstones, it's now available in Waterstones. So I'm very excited about that. But Amazon is still, because with Amazon, once you buy, you read it, you love it, and you leave a review, that does wonders. It does wonders for small businesses like me. And also, another thing I'm going to throw out there is that only 17% of business books are written by women. So that means a lot of our view on business is shaped by men. And yet, the demographic opening the most businesses is actually women. So I'm very passionate about women's voices in the business space, in the luxury space, and in particular, seen as women spend the most on luxury. So again, I can't even begin to tell you the percentage of people of color who've written business books, because it's so low, as little as 3%, 0.01%, depending on what stats you look at. So again, it's different. I love the book because it's a different book. It's a book that is practical. It's written by an entrepreneur for an entrepreneur. It's not written by, I don't claim to be a luxury expert, but I do know what I know, and I do know the clients that I've served. And if somebody as small as me can serve that caliber of clients, well, anybody can do it. So yeah, get it on Amazon, please.
Also, make sure you get your copy. And also, Elizabeth has a podcast called the Luxury Business Podcast, which you can subscribe to. It's on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and I'm sure other places wherever podcasts are played. And diversity in luxury was something we didn't even talk about.
I know,
How
right?
did we avoid that? How did we not do that? So I'm going to leave all of Elizabeth's endeavors and her business links and everything in the show notes. Please visit. Tell us very quickly what diversity in luxury is.
Okay, so it occurred to me that the spending on luxury is actually by people from other cultures, non-Western cultures. So we can see the effects of China spending less on luxury brands right now. So it then occurred to me that we need something to highlight all the diversity in terms of thinking, action, culture that is available in the world. Because if most of our clients are people outside of who don't look like us, so people outside of our countries, then we need to honor that and we need to recognize that. So that's why I created Diversity in Luxury. I've also created the Diversity in Luxury Leaders List to celebrate the leaders who are making a real difference. And this is not about watering down luxury. It's about the inclusivity of vision and the exclusivity of execution. So it's about highlighting a lot of amazing people doing incredible things in the field of luxury. So that's what Diversity in Luxury is all about.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for your time. It was wonderful getting to know more about you as a child, learning about your career journey, and also the book is a masterclass is what I'll call it. And I think that's what this episode is going to be called as well, because that's the short and sweet way I can think about it. Have an amazing day. Thanks a lot, Elizabeth, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you so much, Toks.
You are very welcome. That was an exciting episode. I'm sure you'll agree. I feel so inspired. And what I said to her at the end, that I feel like my fires have been reignited. I meant every word, because I started reading this book. I haven't finished it, as I mentioned, but the little I've taken in just really woke up something in me. You know, I mentioned in a previous episode about 2 weeks ago that I had been experiencing burnout, and one of the signs of burnout is a lack of motivation for even the things you enjoy the most. And that's exactly where I was. But when I started to read this book and I got into some of it, and even just this conversation, I feel stirred up again. I don't know about you, but I would love to hear your thoughts on this. And also, if you know anyone just as dynamic, whose story needs to be heard, whose expertise needs to be shared on the Living Inside Out podcast, why don't you send them my way? I'd really appreciate it. Don't forget to subscribe and to like and to share this episode. And I want to thank you again for listening all the way to the end. Can't wait to hear your thoughts about it. Have a lovely day. Talk to you soon.